Alright, so today I want to briefly discuss Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky. It's a very short novella, can be read in about a day or so, and it's just a masterpiece. This book can really change your life if you take the time to understand it and grapple with it. One of the reasons why you might want to read and why I think everyone should start with Notes from Underground is this novella was written just before his four main masterpieces came in the late 60s. So right before the brilliance that is Crime and Punishment, Demons, The Idiot, or Brothers Karamazov, before you get all of those books, you have Notes from Underground. And this book, I think, thematically, it actually captures the entire themes of the four main books. Long way to say that if you take the time to understand this novella, you can really understand and are ready to tackle any of Dostoevsky's great masterpieces. So what is this novella about? Well, effectively, the novella, it's very simple as far as plot goes. It just follows the journalings of this angry protagonist known as Underground Man. It's very angry, bitter, spiteful recluse. Now, this might be easy to dismiss because of the simplistic plot, or maybe even non-existent plot, but there's actually far more going on beyond the surface of the angry journalings of a sort of misanthrope, but rather there's really a warning here that Dostoevsky is, as he writes in the epigraph at the beginning, the angry man that we'll see in Underground Man is not just a work of fiction, but he's a real person, meaning there are people like him who do exist in the world and who must exist in the world. And why must they exist? Because Dostoevsky realized that the intelligentsia of modernity in the 19th, 20th, and even today, now in the 21st century, the intelligentsia, modern intellectuals, had made a fatal mistake about human nature that threatens to effectively threatens mankind, and I don't take that lightly. Effectively, Dostoevsky more or less predicted the century of genocide, that is, the 20th century, and he did so about 50 or 60 years ahead of time, right? So a very prophetic warning in this book that was sadly fallen upon deaf ears. So today we'll just basically discuss what is that warning, what is this great mistake that the moderns made, what is Dostoevsky trying to teach us here? So let me start with just the very opening lines of this book, because it's really, it's just haunting lines from the very beginning. Underground Man begins, "I am a sick man. I am a wicked man, an unattractive man. I think my liver hurts. However, I don't know a fig about my sickness, and I am not sure what it is that hurts me. I am not being treated and never have been, though I respect medicine and doctors. What's more, I am also superstitious in the extreme. Well, at least enough to respect medicine. I'm sufficiently educated not to be superstitious, but I am." Right. So immediately in these opening lines, we get a sort of an understanding of Underground Man that I think is also a sort of allegory for the mindset of modern man. Right. I am a sick man. I am a wicked man, an unattractive man. Right. And I'm also not superstitious at all. Right. I believe in doctors. I believe in medicine, but at the same time, I'm a little superstitious, right? So what's going on here is we see a lot of self-hatred out of Underground Man. He's actually trapped in his head. The one thing that you'll see him deriding in his writings is this idea called heightened consciousness, right? That he's hyper-focused, he's hyper-aware of himself and trapped in his head. He actually writes himself that to be too conscious is a disease, a real, thorough disease. So the problem, as many other critics point out, is that Underground Man is an overthinker. But why does he overthink? Well, because modern thinking is more or less based on rationality alone. That the great error of modern man, according to Dostoevsky, is modern thinkers believed that mankind, human nature, was solely rational, right? That human beings could be educated to be beings of pure rationality. Dostoevsky thinks this is not only wrong, it doesn't just misunderstand human nature, but if we try to enact social programs presuming that humans are purely rational, this will lead to widespread destruction. Effectively, Notes from Underground is largely a polemic against Chernyshevsky. He was a Russian thinker and a novelist. He wrote this very popular book in the Chernyshevsky. He wrote this book called What is to be Done? It's effectively the first sort of fictional work that publicly proclaims a support for rational utopianism or communist revolution, effectively. It presupposes that man can live off rationality alone and that man can learn to act in his own self-interest, to will the good of the other through reason alone. Right. So It's a sort of foundational thinking that presupposes a utilitarianism. Mankind, through rationality, can be educated outside of his self-destructive tendencies and can learn to voluntarily seek the good of the other of his own accord, and that if we have a community of self-sacrificing, purely rational men, man and woman, then we'll have a utopia in which there's a minimization of suffering and a maximization of pleasure. And this is terrifying to Dostoevsky. So let's go a little further to see why exactly is Dostoevsky terrified about this, because it sounds not too bad on the surface, right? Who doesn't want a utopia? Who doesn't want a good life? Well, as we move on, we see that Underground Man actually begins to scoff this utopianism itself. He scoffs at the idea of a perfect city. He writes, "Who was the first to proclaim that man does dirty only because he doesn't know his real interests, and that were he to be enlightened, were his eyes to be opened to his real normal interests, man would immediately stop doing dirty, would immediately become good and noble. Oh, the babe, oh, the pure, innocent child." Right, so what Underground Man is saying here is mankind can't be, is not a being of sheer rationality. He can't be educated to act in the good of the other. These fatal assumptions is, he says, mankind is not inherently good, man is not inherently rational, and man doesn't always want what's best for himself. That's the real interesting idea. What does it mean man doesn't always want what's best for himself? Well, the rational utopian thinkers like Dostoevsky assumed that man always wants to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. But Dostoevsky says, of course not. Man is not rationality alone. He's a mixture of rationality, but also will and desire. And sometimes mankind can desire the very things that are bad for him. You can think about an alcoholic, right, who knows drinking is bad for him and he wants to stop. That's what rationality tells him, but his will, his desire, forces him to. Or think about the same thing about someone who's addicted to junk food, right? I want to give up chocolate, I want to hit the gym, but man, I love this candy so much, I keep eating it. So man is far more than rationality. Man is rationality plus will. And the rational utopians, the Chernyshevskys of the day, the communist utopians, the nihilists, they have not taken this into account yet. And again, Dostoevsky is really hitting on the head that not only is this a mistake, but this is a fatal mistake if we take this utopianism to its logical conclusion. So let's continue onward. Effectively, we see Underground Man continue to attack this utopianism. He writes later that if you were to give man such economic satisfaction that he no longer has anything left to do at all except sleep, eat gingerbread, and worry about the non-cessation of world history, and it is here, just here, that he, this man, out of sheer ingratitude, out of sheer lampoonery, will do something nasty. He will invent destruction and chaos. He will invent all kinds of suffering and still have his own way. And so, again, what is this insistence that mankind will act for his own desire? Against his own desire, against his own self-interest? Well, Underground Man, and this is where the genius of Dostoevsky comes in, Underground Man says there's one hidden motive that the rational utopians have not taken into account. One hidden motive that human beings will quite literally die for. He writes, "There is this one most profitable profit, which is chiefer and more profitable than all other profits, namely, that man, whoever he might be, has always and everywhere liked to act as he wants, and not at all as reason and profit dictate. The whole human enterprise seems indeed to consist in man's proving to himself every moment that he is a man and not a sprig." And here finally we see the central argument of Dostoevsky's, his argument on human nature. Dostoevsky effectively says that man, since he is not a rational creature, he cannot be socially engineered to be utopian, that he can't be socially engineered to act in his best interest or the interests of others, right? Mankind has agency, mankind has free will, and man will always prefer, in the long run, his capacity to be a free human being, right? Even the dystopian writers agree on this point, right? You have Orwell and Huxley, who will later take this idea of social engineering to create utopia and show how it's a dystopia right? Even they will point out that even in the perfect world, like Huxley's Brave New World, a world full of pleasure and free of suffering, you'll still have human beings that are rebelling, however small it is, because in the long run, man cannot be conditioned to love pleasure to the deprivation of their freedom, because man was not meant to live off of bread alone. There's far more to man, and the very fact he has a spiritual side, a will, and a desire. He has aspects of him that are irrational. And so if you really want to create a good and just society, it can't be one of utopia based off of a maximization of pleasure and a minimizing of suffering. No, there's Dostoevsky says there's something deeper to mankind, something deeper that can truly free man. And the idea then is not to eliminate suffering, but then what is the solution that Dostoevsky is trying to draw upon? Sadly, we don't know the final solution that he wanted to write in Notes from Underground, because the published version is censored. Dostoevsky writes about this in a letter to his brother. He's angry because the censored version is incomplete. But as Dostoevsky writes in his letter, around, I believe, chapter 10 of part 1, Underground Man makes an argument for Christianity. Right. Whatever this argument is, we've lost it, but we can assume that the argument is not made on ideological grounds, because Underground Man is anything but an ideologue, right? He's wickedly sharp and wickedly self-aware. So one might presuppose that this sort of argument, if we're to follow the logic of the argument to its rational conclusion, it would probably be something along the lines of Christianity is a religion that recognizes and allows for human agency and free will, right? The ability to choose between good and evil. But moreover, there's an aspect of Christianity allows suffering to be redeemed, that if you carry your cross more or less, if you handle your suffering nobly in the name of a love of truth and goodness, the Christian promise, the Christian argument is the other side of carrying the cross is a redemption, that your suffering actually sanctifies you if you bear your burdens nobly, voluntarily, and honestly out of a love for God and your fellow neighbor. So it seems to be then that the great warning that fell on deaf ears is, do not try to presume that human nature is inherently good and inherently rational. For if you try to create a utopia, it will only lead to chaos and destruction itself. To show that this is not just mere sensationalism, Chernyshevsky's ideas would indeed inspire the Russian intelligentsia, most notably Lenin. Lenin would say that Chernyshevsky's novel What Is to Be Done inspired him to be a new man, and Lenin named his pamphlets after What Is to Be Done. So, in other words, the very ideas that Dostoevsky is attacking in Chernyshevsky were the same ideas that inspired the communist revolution that preceded and basically kicked off the century of genocide. Right? It's said that communism took up to 100 million lives throughout the 20th century. So, all this is to say is that when you really understand the rational utopianism that Dostoevsky is attacking, you're understanding the fatal mistakes about human nature that preceded to a whirlwind of death and genocide. And on the other hand, you begin to understand at least the search and the necessity, the need for a sort of truth outside of human nature, that if human beings are not sheer rational creatures, but mixtures of will and desire and rationality, how do you integrate and combine the two that man can be an integrated whole that can live a good life? And you'll later see this, even though Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground is censored, you'll later get the full argument about the need for redemption, and I'd say Brothers Karamazov. But that more or less ends the video here, so if you enjoy this and want to go deeper, first I have a Substack, I'll link to that below. I do 2 full-length articles every single week on the great books, the great thinkers of the West. And also, if you are a Christian man and you're looking to either go deeper on the great books or go deeper on your faith, or if you're looking to even get in touch with your personal fitness, I am a personal trainer and men's coach. I teach people about the great books. I help them in their faith walk, and I help them get in shape to reinstill that sort of heart on fire, that sort of love of God that leads to a meaningful life. So I'll drop a link to that below if you're interested. You can check it out. And yeah, that's all I've got for you. So thanks again for watching, as always, my friend, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. Take care.